Today I'm providing some general information about slip and falls. But if you need specific advice about your circumstance, then I can be reached at the contact information. I'd be happy to chat. I'm Natalie Gerry, the principal lawyer and founder of Gerry Law. I help injured people get the compensation that they deserve for their injuries. Let's get into the 10 things that you need to know about slip and fall accidents. First of all, you should be aware of the Occupier's Liability Act. So this is the law in Ontario that imposes a duty on property occupiers to ensure the safety of all visitors. So they have to do what's reasonable to maintain a safe property. This duty extends to owners, tenants, contractors, and others who have control of the premises. There may be multiple occupiers too, so that's important to know. There might be more than one defendant. There can be multiple occupiers of a property. And getting to the bottom of who's actually responsible is sometimes a bit difficult. For example, I've had cases where there is someone who's in charge of clearing snow at the property, but then there's someone different who's in charge of shoveling the walkways and sanding and salting the walkways. So sometimes you need to do a bit of digging, and your lawyer can help with that to figure out who's responsible for the area where you fell. The second issue to be aware of is what's called the duty of care. So occupiers are required to take reasonable care to ensure the safety of visitors. And this includes maintaining the premises in a reasonably safe condition and addressing foreseeable dangers promptly. So issues can come up when these occupiers don't have policies in place that show what they were doing in terms of maintenance, or when they don't have proper records of what was done. So these are some ways that they would use to show that they met their duty of care to visitors to the property. But these are some types of evidence that can be really helpful in terms of finding out if they met their duty to the person who was injured. The third thing to know is about liability for the condition of the property. Occupiers might be liable if they fail to address hazardous conditions like snow, ice, slippery surfaces, spills, if they don't have adequate lighting, or if they don't address other dangers that lead to slip and fall accidents. The fourth thing to know is about commercial property responsibilities. So businesses must implement policies to maintain a safe premises. Employees are responsible for keeping floors clean of hazards, and failing to do so can result in liability for injuries sustained on the property. So there are many different ways that a company can fail to meet the standard of care. So even if they have these policies in place, then we need to look at, did they train the employees about the policies? Were the employees, were they knowing about the policies? Were they following the policies? Were they properly trained? So all of these things, even checking up that employees were following the policies, if they weren't checking on them, then how would they even know if they were doing it properly? These are all ways that you can look at establishing whether they met the standard of care or not. Municipal property obligations. So slip and falls can frequently happen on municipal property that falls under the Municipal Act because there is so much property. So there are sidewalks, there are parking lots, there are parks. Municipalities do have a duty of care, but it is a bit of a different duty of care. So you should speak with a lawyer about that. Liability can still arise if there is negligence in maintenance and it causes an accident. The sixth thing to know is the standard of repair. Municipalities are generally liable for slip and fall accidents caused by neglected maintenance and in particular, gross negligence. This standard requires municipalities to have acted unreasonably despite clear hazards. So, this is a bit of a higher standard of care than just a private property owner or a commercial property. Tip number 7 is the importance of identifying responsible parties. So, as I was mentioning, potential parties responsible for slip and fall accidents include not only the property owner, also maintenance contractors, landlords, property managers, and employees tasked with upkeep. Determining liability requires a thorough investigation, and your lawyer can help with this part and can do some searches to determine who is liable and to get the proper names so you're naming the parties properly. Tip number 8 is to be mindful of the notice periods that apply depending on the location of the accident. So, if it's a government property versus a residential property, there are different notice periods that apply. So, it's crucial to report the accident as promptly as possible, to give notice of the accident to anyone who seems to be in charge, and to get legal advice as soon as possible so that you can make sure that you're meeting those notice requirements. The ninth thing to be aware of is statutes of limitation. So in Ontario, people who have been injured usually have up to 2 years to file a lawsuit for a slip and fall. Missing this deadline can forfeit your right completely to seek compensation. So it is extremely important that you get timely legal advice. And that 2 year period is shorter for notice. So notice has to be given as quickly as 10 days, sometimes as quickly as 60 days, depending on the situation. And you do need legal advice about that. So that brings me to tip number 10. Make sure you get legal guidance. Consulting with a lawyer who is specialized in this area of personal injury is advisable, and I highly recommend it after a slip and fall accident. Even if you decide that you don't want to pursue it, it's a good idea to speak with a lawyer, and most personal injury lawyers do offer a free consultation, and they can help to give you some advice about your next steps and your rights. Understanding these key issues will empower you, if you're involved in a slip and fall accident, to know some of your rights and some of the issues at play. Prompt action and informed decisions are crucial in getting a favorable outcome in these types of cases. And I can be reached at the information below if you have any more specific questions about your circumstances.